Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started. Quick introductions of sorts. My name is Kevin Thomas. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian. I've been in this role working on behalf, or where I should say for, Gem Care Wellness now about 7 years, though I've been a dietitian 17. The topic of today's discussion, exercise that works for you from couch to cardio. Today's presentation will take approximately about 20 minutes, give or take. And if anybody has any questions, I would like to ask, please hold them until the end because there will be an opportunity to ask. All right. So quick overview of what we will be discussing today, looking at why movement matters specifically for diabetes. Looking at different types of exercises that can affect blood sugar. Also exploring the importance of establishing a specific routine that works for your individual lifestyle. That is very important. Very important. Also talking about the importance of staying safe while exercising and trying to prevent low blood sugars that can accompany exercise on occasion for some people. And lastly, I'll be discussing tips for motivation and consistency. Getting started with exercise is great, but if we lack the motivation and drive to keep it going long term, that often needs to be discussed because that is the missing piece for a lot of people. So, first things first, let's talk about the benefits, the many benefits of exercise and why movement matters, not just for diabetes, but for everyone in general. Okay. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. There could be over 100 reasons, and there are over 100 reasons why movement matters and exercise is important for diabetes. But first things first, exercise helps to improve insulin sensitivity. That is the end all be all when it comes to diabetes. So that being said, what is one thing that can really slow the progression of diabetes? Well, there's a lot of factors that can speed up the progression of diabetes. Exercise significantly slows the progression of diabetes. Okay, so insulin sensitivity, making sure that the insulin that our body naturally produces, our pancreas, or the insulin medication that we might be giving to ourselves, how can we make it work best with less? Through exercise. Exercise helps a lot. So it helps your body use insulin more effectively for more steadier blood sugar management. Secondly, movement matters because exercise helps manage blood sugars. Okay, so it lowers blood sugar during activity by and large, okay, and keeps it balanced afterwards. I will talk in a couple minutes about different types of exercise and what it can do to your blood sugars, but as a whole, exercise helps lower blood sugars. Thirdly, exercise boosts energy and movement. A very popular saying in my line of field, or excuse me, my line of work is, movement changes mood. A fancier way of saying, physiology changes psychology. Movement really does release those feel-good endorphins. It also increases circulation. It reduces aches and pains. Okay. It often adds a smile to people's faces, even though during exercise itself, it might be a little bit difficult. It might be a little bit exhausting. It's going to require effort. Okay. That doesn't require a smile or often put a smile on a lot of people's faces, but afterwards you will feel better in most all cases. Exercise supports our heart and joint health. So one of the potential side effects, or I should say complications of diabetes is it can affect circulation. Okay. In addition, it can affect a lot of our organs, primarily the heart. Well, exercise keeps the heart strong in as much as we're possibly able to do that. The heart is a muscle like everything else on our body, or much like most parts of our body, and we either use it or we lose it as far as the strength. Exercise helps to build up the strength and endurance of our heart. It also keeps the joints flexible and mobile, which is very important, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Lastly, exercise reduces stress. It helps put life in the proper perspective. So it lowers the stress hormones like cortisol and helps prevent stress-related spikes. So even stress, if it's not well managed, can increase our blood sugars. Most people are aware that stress, if left unmanaged, can impact our blood pressures, but it also can drive our blood sugars up. Okay, so it's important that one focus on stress management. Exercise is simply another added technique towards that. Moving on. All right, so what types of exercise impacts blood sugar, as well as some other potential benefits of exercise? So first things first, aerobic exercise, whether it's walking, cycling, it could be using an elliptical, it could be outdoors going for a hike, uh, even though it's fall, winter's not far away. Ice skating could be another one. Simply put, it lowers our blood sugar while we are doing it, and also helps to manage our blood sugars for the rest of that day. Now, I want you to think about, or at least make a comparison to a vehicle. So the gas gauge on a vehicle, it goes down the more we drive the vehicle. Simply put, at any speed. Okay. Same idea with aerobic exercise. It moves that needle or blood sugar down a little bit with every minute that we're exercising. That's very good. Okay. Now let's compare that to strength training. Whether we are using light weights or heavy weights or using resistance bands, I could even make the case that strength training would be similar to people competing in competitive sports, such as swinging a baseball bat, such as running to tackle somebody while playing football. It could be tennis as one swings, right? The tennis racket. But essentially, strength training builds muscle and improves long-term control. So how exactly does it do that? So during strength training or anything that requires a good amount of intense muscular intensity, okay, it stresses the system out. Well, why is that a good thing? Well, as long as it doesn't overly stress or overly tax our body, it increases our endorphins, which is great. Okay. But it also leads to recovery of, in some cases, 2, 3, even 4 days for our muscles to properly recover. It's during that period of time our blood sugars are getting more and more better controlled. It improves insulin sensitivity through basically through resistance training. Now, compared to aerobic training, again, that's walking, cycling, something that's steady state, it's comfortable. Or it might get our heart rate up, but it's not from lifting of weights. Okay. So strength training can temporarily see a little increase in blood sugars, which isn't problematic for most people unless one's blood sugars are already very high. So just know, if you're living with diabetes and you're exercising, walking generally reduces exercise, or aerobic activity does. But if it's something that leads to a big increase in intensity, an endorphin rush, we might temporarily see a spike of blood sugars or a temporary increase in blood sugars. Now, there should be something to be said about exercise and its impact on our flexibility and balance. So, as we age, our coordination goes down. Our proprioception, which is essentially our body's understanding of what's next to us, whether it's a wall, whether it's a closet, whether it's a mouse pad or a cup, that goes down as we get older. We're more accident prone, simply put. Well, through exercise, it helps to reduce injury. Why? The stronger we are, the less prone we are to little things that might impact other people that are weak. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Recently, I worked with a physical therapist that I thought did a fantastic job of making a comparison, or at least putting it in a different perspective for me, the importance of strength. And she was talking about seeing and meeting with a lot of clients that have a lot of orthopedic injuries. And the one she discussed was back pain. And she said some people come in here that she treats. She goes, Kevin, they can't bend down and pick up 10 pounds. I said, yikes. I was just hoping, some people in those cases, they're probably happy just to be mobile around the house, maybe picking up a laundry basket to do laundry. And she says, Kevin, the goal for those people isn't just to do laundry. They have to get stronger. And I thought to myself, well, what if it's an older person? Why would that matter so much? She said, well, let's take an older person whose difficulty is lifting 15 pounds. So she's always lifting 10 or 11 pounds, real close to what that physical therapist said was her one rep maximum. So one repetition is her maximum weight that she can lift. Well, she's always going close to her one rep max. Why that isn't a good thing is the higher we are or the closer we are to our one repetition maximum, the greater risk injury. It makes perfect sense. It's similar to somebody deadlifting that can deadlift, let's say 500 pounds. If they are routinely deadlifting 450, it increases the likelihood of injury because that person is just so close to their maximum output. So the goal for exercise is to, over time, increase our strength. In so doing, it reduces our injury risk, and it does support mobility. Movement's easier when our muscles, even if they're just a little bit stronger, we can see a big change in our quality of life, not just for those people living with diabetes, but for anyone. So the timing and duration of exercise, in some cases, can dramatically alter blood sugar response. I'll give you an idea. After the largest meal of the day, for most people, it's dinner. If people went on a 10 to 15-minute walk, they would be probably shocked at how much better their blood sugars are being controlled because of that post-dinner walk. When our blood sugars are spiked, which is going to happen after meals, when we're moving, it helps to decrease our blood sugar faster. And it doesn't have to be exhaustive exercise. You take somebody that's 200 pounds or even somebody that's 150 pounds, just walking is not strength training. But every step they take for that 200-pound person, they're moving 200 pounds. Their muscles are getting activated. Their heart is pumping a little bit harder and moves oxygen throughout our body. It's using up basically glucose or blood sugar. Same with that example with a 150-pound person. It's not strength training, but it does the body good. And lastly, it's important to monitor our blood sugars before, during, and after for some people in certain cases. And I'll give you an idea. If any one person here has had some blood sugar troubles because of exercise, such as going too low, it'd probably be wise to monitor your blood sugar just to see where it's at before exercise. Whether we are using a simple glucose meter to prick our finger, put it on a test strip to see where our blood sugars are at, or somebody is utilizing a continuous glucose monitor, which is the sensors that go on the back side of the arm. Now, not all people that living with diabetes would be all that much impacted by blood sugar lows or even highs during exercise, but a good number of people are, particularly those people that use either insulin or utilizing an insulin pump. You might see some blood sugars go too low or even too high if one pauses their insulin pump, in this case. When blood sugar is over 270, also last point here, it is recommended to wait until your blood sugars are below 270 to exercise. All right, so as I stated at the beginning of today's class, building a routine that fits for you is very important, and it needs to be done within the context of your life. So first things first, depending on where our exercise level is at, it's always wise, if we're getting started at least, to start small and to acknowledge that every bit does count. So what does small look like? Okay, so if we're just starting or initiating an exercise routine or regimen, well, if it's been decades since we worked out, as the picture illustrates in the background here, it might be wise to start with light weights. In this case, if we're wanting to strength train, or maybe going for a 3, 4, 5-minute walk to see how our body responds, just to get started. So many people are motivated to get started with all this change that it might have been a while since they were inspired or motivated to change, or they may have just had a visit with a doctor who really provided that encouragement, or maybe even scared them because they found out some bad news about their health. And so they're geared up and ready to go. But we have to understand our motivation. We need to temper maybe not our expectations, but we need to stay in line with what our body can do. So start small, work your way up. And I don't just mean the volume of weights or how many repetitions we're doing, but also the frequency. Getting started when it comes to exercise, maybe 2 days a week at first, just to see how our body responds, is a very conservative and wise approach for many. Also, it says, find movement you enjoy. Please understand that exercise isn't just what's going on in a gym, or as this picture shows, it could be a YMCA or fitness class or senior center, right? Exercise can happen anywhere. So a gym membership isn't necessarily required to improve your physical fitness. A member I worked with years ago, she found her way back to being fit through ballroom dancing. It's something she did with her husband. She liked being around other people, kind of the social element to it. I thought that was great. Other people, they might enjoy working out in isolation. So they might enjoy working out in the privacy of their own home. And that's what works best for them. Or just going on a long walk or hike by themselves. It's whatever you enjoy, and it doesn't, again, have to be one set thing. Some people like working out on treadmills, going for a nice long run. Other people consider treadmills dreadmills, so they're going to be avoiding that exercise. Now, when it comes to what is the ideal type of exercise, the ideal type of exercise should incorporate mostly cross training, which would be a healthy mix of cardio, strength training, and stretching. Now, each one of these in isolation does a lot of good things on our body. But if you combine cardio, strength, and stretching, that's essentially has a synergistic effect, right? If we're building up our cardio, that's great. That means our heart is getting stronger, our legs primarily are getting stronger. But what about our overall body strength? We might not be getting stronger, at least not our upper body if we're doing a lot of cardio. That's where strength training comes into play. Again, whether it's resistance band training, free weights, machine weights, all of it matters. Having a healthy mix, of strength training, cardio, being stronger, more physically fit, will improve your heart health in the long run. It'll improve your muscle composition. It'll improve your blood sugars, which in turn basically means, we're having better energy throughout the day to where if we're wanting to do some more cardio, we can because we're not having those high and low blood sugar spikes that a lot of people experience that don't exercise. And lastly, this is where, not necessarily just for diabetes, stretching is important, whether we're doing it before the exercise, for prehab, as they call it, or even post exercise. Just to kind of that warm, that cool down period that a lot of people enjoy. Being flexible helps because if we're not flexible, we're very tight. And a very tight muscle is more prone to injury. Now our schedule, we need to schedule it like an appointment. Well, some people like that approach because they could do it first thing in the morning, right? So if we don't have much or if we have a lot going on today, if we schedule it in the morning when we have nothing else already planned beyond getting ready for the day, that might be the most optimal time for that particular person to work out. Other people, if you're scheduling it for first thing in the morning, well, what if they're working third shift, right? Morning time would be at the conclusion of their day. They're probably too tired. So it doesn't have to be at one set time, but treating the idea or the concept of exercise like an appointment that you can't miss unless you're really sick is a good approach to it. Because there's a lot of reasons just to put it off till tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes next week, next month, next year. Lastly, it's important to listen to your body. Now, you might say, well, Kevin, what if I'm just not motivated to exercise? And what I'm doing is I'm listening to my body. That's a good thing. Not really in this regard, right? So it's important if we go on a little walk or if we're walking around the mall, if we acknowledge or see that, man, it's tiring me out just walking in the mall. Well, maybe that's a heads up or an indicator that you might need to put in more time for exercise. What if you're going grocery shopping and you're lifting the 8-pound gallon of, or excuse me, a gallon of milk weighs about 8 pounds. You're lifting that in a bag and you think to yourself, man, that's pretty heavy. Those to me are small indicators that one might need to exercise. Okay. Even just for a quality of life standard of not being winded or fatigued so easily. All right, moving on. So it's important to stay safe when it comes to exercise. Okay, so again, like I mentioned a moment ago, we can't be so motivated that we go from not exercising to trying to exercise 5 to 6 to 7 days a week. That's not realistic nor safe. As I stated below, or excuse me, before, it's important to check our blood sugars before and after meals, particularly if we've had issues, usually with low blood sugar. If you haven't had any issues, you're living with diabetes, and you don't notice your energy being all that different from exercise, you might not need to check your blood sugars. But for those that have a history of going low or a history going very high, it would be wise to check them before and after exercise. And in some cases, if it's long exercise, during. For those people that do have a history of running low for their blood sugars, carry some quick, it says quick carbs. So carbohydrates that break down and are readily absorbed, whether it is glucose tablets that you can pick up at pretty much every pharmacy, grocery store out there, but also maybe having a little, a serving of juice set aside, just in case. It's readily absorbed in the bloodstream, and it will raise your blood sugars the quickest back in the normal range. Staying hydrated is important, especially if it has to do with cardio. We're going for a run, a long walk, going for a hike. It's important that we stay hydrated, because if there's one thing that'll decrease our energy, just like diabetes does, it's being dehydrated. Wearing supportive shoes is very important, okay, especially if we're going to be on our feet. The last thing that we want is to pull something, right, through exercise. And what I mean by that, if you have shoes that are not the appropriate footwear, it can raise some issues, right? We can pull things. I'm sure most of us have heard of plantar fasciitis. A lot of that comes from not being mobile, number one. Number two, not having the adequate footwear. And lastly, it is important to talk with a healthcare provider before major changes are put in place, especially for those of you that have not been exercising for quite a while. And I don't mean just a month or two. I mean years and decades. If it's been a long time from exercising, it's important to talk to your doctor just to keep him or her informed on what you're wanting to do, and for them basically let you know what is the best type of exercise, what is appropriate. If it's been 20 years since you exercised, your goal should not to be to run a marathon, right? Your goal maybe is to exercise for 10 minutes. See how your body feels. Not to say we can't shoot for the stars. It's important to be realistic with the expectations we might now be putting on our body. So some tips for motivation and consistency. It's important that we be, as I just mentioned, be realistic with what we're wanting our body to accomplish, as well as having some short-term goals. So one thing I often see with people that that might be a bit inconsistent. They might work out for a month or two, then they get overwhelmed, they get busy with life, and that's one thing that goes to the wayside. And so they stop exercising for a month or two or three or four, okay? Often I find with those people is they haven't built any short-term goals. So number one, they don't know why they want to exercise outside of being healthy, as opposed to my goal for this next A1C, I'm bringing it down from a 7.5 to a 6.5. They have a clear-cut reason for why they're exercising. And they're also being realistic with a sense of urgency. And what I mean by that, if we have a goal that is 2 years out for health, that probably is not going to motivate us today, right? Because there's not much of a sense of urgency. It's 2 years. That's 2027, right? Closer to 2028, just about. But if we set a 3-month goal, we set limits on what we want to achieve, we're much more likely to get there, okay? It says here, start small and build gradually so progress feels achievable and motivating. So if a 3-month goal is too far out, what about a month goal, right? Maybe tracking our blood sugars for a week or two would be a good goal to see how exercise impacts it, before and after. The second one here for tips for motivation and consistency, similar to what I just brought up, track your progress. So using a journal or application, a phone application, to see improvements and stay encouraged. When we see all the effort that we've put in through exercise in the past, that might get us over the hump of this midweek lull that people have, right? Hump day, for example, right? The beginning of the week's behind us, the middle of the week's here. I'm a little tired. I don't really feel like working out. Well, look what you've already done over this last week, last week's, last month. If you're writing down what you're doing, it might provide that encouragement to keep going. As I said earlier, you need to understand what motivates you when it comes to a most comfortable environment to work out in. So maybe finding a workout buddy or group partner or group class might be the encouragement that it needs. Now, one benefit I find of those people working out in a gym is you're not necessarily with all like-minded people. We're all different. We're all unique. However, you're around a group of people that are trying to improve their fitness levels. At the least, you share that in common. So just being around other people in that environment might spur further consistency, might really help when it comes to, the frequency of how often you're showing up to work out. But finding an accountability partner or a group is important, and it also makes it more enjoyable. It's important to, it says here, pair movement with music or podcasts. Well, that's a way to make boredom fly away or boredom go away. And what I mean by that is, and one tactic or strategy that I personally employ, there's a lot of podcasts I like to watch or podcasters I like to listen to. I only listen to them when I'm exercising. I could listen to them every day and I'd like to. Well, guess what? Unless I'm working out, I don't listen to them. And it motivates me to get on my elliptical downstairs. When I'm on it for 5 minutes, I keep going. Why? Not necessarily because one foot is in front of the other. What's in motion stays in motion. No, I keep going because I want to listen to what the podcaster has to say next. Or it could be music for some people. So, and lastly, it says, focus on how it makes you feel. Notice boost in energy, mood, and confidence, not just physical results. When it comes to physical results that we see through exercise, we might work out really hard 2 or 3 days in a row. And if we're not seeing any change, we might say to ourselves, our inner self, you know what? I'm really not getting that return on the investment, the ROI that I should be getting. I've been exercising very hard lately. What is going on? Well, the physical changes we see are more subtle. The return on that investment, you might not see it for a week or two or even a month or two. However, with exercise, we should see boosts in energy, mood, and confidence normally within 1 or 2 exercise sessions. That's a fantastic return on investment. To feel better, have better energy, right? To be more awake, more alive, more youthful that exercise provides. Those are tangible benefits that individually matter a lot. All right, so how can the CoreVantage program help? Okay, so this is a program opened up to clients of Edwards Healthcare Services that are currently using a continuous glucose monitor or CGM. So with the CGM, one gets to track their blood sugars all throughout the day. Well, if you work with a dietitian, which the CoreVantage at this point is a free program, right? And essentially you'd be working with dietitians like myself, which now, even though I'm a dietitian, I understand nutrition is but just one piece that makes up health and wellness, particularly for those people managing their blood sugars. Okay, but the CoreVantage program involves nutrition coaching. We discuss diabetes supplies. We discuss what your blood sugars might be. We discuss the topics that drive you to improve your health. So it is a very personalized approach to health improvement. We encourage, it helps with encouragement and accountability. And as I often say, at the worst, anytime you're working with somebody to improve your health, the goal should be to encourage engagement to drive behavior change. And we do that as a group of dietitians. The program is also designed to work with Edwards Healthcare Services to make sure that your care is coordinated, meaning you get the supplies that you should be getting on a regular basis, so you're not missing out on anything to track your blood sugars. So we try to tailor this program to help each and every person out as best we can and meet each member where they're at, really with the end goal to improve their health. All right. So, that being said, any questions that anybody in the audience might want to ask today? All right. Now, I did have a question come through. Now, I should say this. Yes, I talked about aerobic training. I talked about resistance training, talked about flexibility, how they all go together. Okay. Now, if there are some orthopedic injury issues, and one isn't able to go for a long walk, or they can't stand their feet for very long, that doesn't necessarily mean that all exercise is out of the question or out of the equation. We have to do what we have to do for our body, but we have to acknowledge we need to scale it to a certain extent. If you like to run and you have bad knees, what about cycling, right? If you have a hard time breathing because let's say long COVID, right? The long-term complications, some people that I still work with, their endurance, they get exhausted quickly. Well, maybe that's where strength training comes into play. Nobody says we have to lift weights really, really fast and get that workout done in 5 minutes. Maybe we do we lift weights for about 5 minutes and take a 5 minute break and then get back to it. So that's the one big takeaway I would say from people that have any limitations is we have to understand to scale it to what they can do. Whether that limitation is based upon endurance or muscular limitation, as long as you focus on small progress, and for some people, the progress they should be looking to see is how often are they working out, right? If our goal is to start working out, literally bookending it, one time beginning of the week, one time at the end, might even work. That's a good strategy for most people. And also another question that came through here. For those people that are busy, that are just trying to get started with exercise, what can they do? Well, one strategy that often works for a lot of people that I talk with, if they don't have the time open to commit to let's say working out 100 minutes a week. Well, what about this? Get some resistance bands and do 150 repetitions on Monday and 150 repetitions towards the end of the week. Whether we're working our arms, our shoulders, our legs. There's a lot of workout videos online using resistance bands. Why resistance bands are nice for those people that are go, go, go. You can put them anywhere. You can roll them up. They're just little stretchy bands, okay? But they do provide some resistance training that does help to support blood sugars. Any other questions from the audience? No? Okay. Well, everyone, thank you very much for your time with me today. If you have any questions, please reach out. I have an email address there, as well as a web link and a telephone number. Thank you very much for your time. All the best.